My name's Rachel Hansen. I work for the City of Lafayette Arts and Cultural Resources Department. And Madeline Vargas is joining us as well, and she works for Arts and Cultural Resources also. We are hosting ceramics with Cannon Street Ceramics. This was a free studio art kit made available through our grants and funds with the City of Lafayette. I'm so glad that you all could join us. Kyle Gutierrez is the owner of Cannon Street Ceramics in Lafayette. He is a Lafayette native and he grew up here. He's also a certified teacher, and we're really excited that he's doing this class with us, and I will turn it over to Kyle.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thanks so much for joining us, guys. Let me just switch my camera so you can just kind of see sort of above. And I'm just going to start by going over kind of what we're going to be doing and some of the tools I'll be using. But I'll get to some of it later. But so what we're going to do first, I think I'm going to start by doing a slab cup. So I'm going to show you how you can roll out your slab and texture it, and then kind of what we do. One thing I noticed, this clay is kind of soft. So one thing you might have to do is maybe set it aside. Like if you feel like things are kind of too soft and falling apart, let it sit for 15, 20 minutes, or like find a nice sunny spot and let it firm up just a little. So if you have really soft clay, I would suggest doing that. Otherwise, so what we're going to do first with our slab is we're going to start rolling it out. And I'm going to kind of make a kind of not too tall of a cup, kind of just a coffee mug, diner mug, and then I'm going to do a handle as well. So I'll show you. I have coils here. We're going to do coil pot. I'll show you how to do a coil pot. And then also I'll finish with a pinch pot. And I'm just going to try to combine as many techniques as I can in all three of these. So yeah, for a slab pot, you are going to need a rolling pin. So what you're going to do is I start, especially if it's in a ball, pound it out a little bit before you start rolling it out. Flatten it out. So if I'm making a cup, and this could be, you could make from a slab, you really can create anything. Like you guys could create a bowl, a taller cup, but just think about the shape of your slab before you roll it out. Like if you want a cup, maybe don't make it a circle. So I'm going to kind of make mine a rectangle. And I'll roll it and then flip it. So I'll do that again and then roll it. And you can go in every direction. If you guys see like air bubbles popping up or anything like that, just if you have toothpicks, that could be handy. That was one thing I was thinking. We have like these little scratchy tools that are basically just little fine needles, but something to kind of scratch anywhere you're attaching is handy. So I'm going to flip it and roll it. And it's good to have extra at this point, because I have a ruler. So maybe that would actually be good before I move forward. And maybe you guys, everyone should probably have their tools alongside them. But just kind of quickly, I want to go over some of the things that I'm going to be using today. Like for a slab, I'm going to be using a ruler just to cut straight lines. Your tools have those little modeling kits. Some of them you can use to cut tools, like little kind of a needle or a knife tool almost. But you can use that to cut things. You can use stamps. Stamps are like a really big thing. Like, so I'm not really going to use these, but just an example. Fabric stamps, one of our students does a lot of things with stamps. So anything you like think that has texture and that you want to press into the clay, you have these like rollers with texture. I like to just take like dowel rods or something and press into it. So really just like get creative with it, however you want to texture it. You'll need a sponge at some point to soften it up. So keep rolling. And so what I'm going to do now is once you have your shape rolled out, you're gonna do all the texturing that you wanna do before we put it together. So I have these little cool little like postage stamps. They're rubber stamps with skulls on them, and I think they're kind of fun. So I'm gonna do all the stamping and texturing that I wanna do now before I put the pot together. So I even have like, I don't know, a little like timer cap, and it has this and it leaves cool lines. So like I said, there, I have a drawer handle that you can use to press into things just for texture. So really just like, feel free to use whatever you want to do this. And the cool thing too is if you make a mistake or you don't like it, just squish it up and try something new. You can keep adding water to it and keep hydrating it if you make a mistake. So I'm gonna go ahead and start stamping. My clay is a little wet. I did a little too much pushing there. So I'm gonna do all my stamping first and not really worry too much about anything else except for the texture that I'm putting on. And now that I have that, so I'm just gonna kind of do something like this. Kind of hard to see. Let me get a light on. That might help. But so what I'm gonna do now is I like to use my ruler now at this point. And if you have like a metal ruler or something kind of sturdy, you could just like do something like this, like use the ruler to cut a flat edge. Or use kind of any kind of tool, like a knife tool of some kind. You can wash anything that you use, like if you use a fork maybe for scratching, you can use that. This clay is like not toxic, super toxic. You just want to wash it off.
Kyle, we have a question. How thick or thin should the clay be rolled out?
Okay, so you can go pretty thin, but you want to be careful about like going like paper thin. So I have my slab here, and there it is right there. Like I would say 1/2 inch is probably the 1/4 inch is the minimum. 1/2 inch is maximum. You don't want it too thick.
So your slab seems kind of thick, on the thicker end of that spectrum, right?
It definitely is. But what I like doing is I do this, and then once so I've cut it, right? I have my slab cut out. And then what I'm going to do with my cut is just fold it. So now I have like my cut form. And one thing I'm going to do too, if I'm going to make a cup, I kind of like to bevel these edges, kind of give it a nice angle so they fit into each other as opposed to just fitting on top. So just I'm using a needle tool. You could use like a knife, a butter knife would work really well too. But just kind of give it a little angle so that they fit into each other. If your clay's pretty soft, I'm gonna kind of be cheating right now, but I would really recommend always scratching, like scoring the surface, so making marks on the surface anywhere you're connecting, and then you could use a paintbrush or even just your finger and some water. And then, so make sure you scratch and wet that area before you attach it.
Great. Kyle, let's give everyone a minute to get some water if they didn't have that already on their table.
Okay.
And so if you've watched the first few minutes and you feel like you're missing something, maybe you need a cup of water for your clay or a butter knife or something that you didn't have at your table and you want to go grab that, we'll give you a second so you don't feel like you're in a hurry. We had a couple people just join us, and just to let you know, Kyle's making a slab cup. And he rolled the clay out. He stamped the clay with some rubber stamps.
Let me get the light on while everyone's getting on.
He stamped it, he trimmed the clay, and he scored the clay to attach the edges. And we're giving everyone a minute to grab some extra tools. If there's something in your house that you feel you might need right now, like a cup of water or a ruler or a rolling pin, you can go ahead and grab that. Thank you. And we have one more coming in. Welcome. If you're just joining us, we do have everyone on mute right now. Please feel free to type in the chat or use the reactions to have us slow down or ask a question. We'll have some open time towards the end. You might need a cup of water. You might need a ruler to go with the tools that came in your kit. And Kyle is working on his slab pot. And Kyle, one of the questions is, could you describe again how to cut the clay to get that shape?
Yeah. So imagine if I have a rectangle. I'll just do it kind of quickly. Okay, I'll use this just as an example and a pencil. So say that this is my slab right here, my paper, and I only want a certain part of it. Because say that all my textures and stamps are within this area. So then you just take your ruler, and it can be bigger, it can be smaller, and you cut it into a rectangle shape. And I would kind of start longer, because it is easy to, like, once you fold it, you'll have like a really, really tiny cut. So you do kind of want to fold out like kind of a longer rectangle, more rectangular, not like a square, because then it really will be pretty stubby. But you know, I don't know if you guys can see this, but sort of more of a rectangle shape. I noticed, like, Jessica, if you did like a round slab, if you have something like round at home that's not sticky, like this is just like something that somebody made, just a bowl form, and you can take a slab, like your round slab, and drape it over, and it'll give you that curve. So you know, there's something like that you guys could use. And I wouldn't worry too much about it, the clay being super like messy at this point, because once it firms up, we can soften it up with a sponge. Can I move on to the next step? Or I see there's questions. Yes, make a round slab. So I'm gonna just move on here and start with the next part. So for our cup, now we're gonna make the bottom. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roll out another slab. And I'm gonna use this slab for a couple things, because I'm also gonna use this for my coil pot as well. You can flip it and roll it, stretch it out a little bit more. So now that I have my slab here, to build the bottom, what you can do is you can set it on top of the slab and then just trace it. So I'm gonna just use this pencil here and trace a circle around my pot. Then I can take it off and cut it. So I can even use something like these, like if you guys have a wood tool that has kind of a knifed edge, you can use that too. So now I have my round slab. I'm going to set this aside for later. Actually, I'll roll it out later. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is attach the bottom. So anywhere around the edge, you want to make sure that with a toothpick or something or a fork, you just scratch, 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 scratch. Anywhere that you're making an attachment. If you're attaching a handle, you're putting like a ring on the bottom of your bowl, make sure you scratch it. And this clay is really wet, so I don't really need to worry too much. I would be careful about adding too much water at the beginning stage, because you don't want it to get soppy wet and fall apart on you. And another thing that I found too, so I did my stamping while it was a slab, but now if I have things that, like I just put a finger smudge right here. So what I can do is, now that it's attached, I can just take my stamp and just stamp right over it. Again, that's one thing with clay, you kind of have to learn patience and figure out when is the right time to play with it. Because like right now, this thing is so soft, it's just kind of squishing around on me. So I think this is a good time for me to set this aside, and I'm going to start on the next technique. And then I can show you how to finish this up, how to clean it up, put a handle on it. But I'm going to call this good for now and move on to the next one. Does anyone have any questions on the cup so far or anything?
That looks great, Kyle. Thank you.
Okay. And I guess if you guys are working on this and setting it aside, I noticed mine was kind of like weird looking, oblong. So I don't want to like set it aside like this, because then it'll just stay like that once it dries. So make sure you make it look nice and pretty before setting it aside to dry. I'm simply just pinching the rim right now to clean it up, to get rid of any sharp edges. And then once this firms up, you just take your the little sponge that you guys have and some water and smooth it down.
So Kyle, someone asked how long it takes to dry, and should you dry them in the oven?
No, do not use the oven. Just let them air dry. So whenever you're done with them, just set them aside, and you don't even have to wrap them unless they're like sopping wet. Then I would suggest maybe draping some plastic over them. But you want to avoid being sopping wet.
And just as a reminder, Kyle will have you drop all of your pieces back to the studio, and he will fire them in the kiln. So you're not going to dry them at home. You're going to take them to him, and he will fire them, glaze them, and fire them for you.
Yeah, and not weeks to dry. Sorry, I might have said that wrong. It'll take like, if I left this, like these coils right now, I started rolling these like half an hour ago, 45 minutes ago, and the texture's already changing on them, like they're cracking and stuff. So if you left something out like overnight, it would dry. So, and that might be a good thing. Like, just once you're done with it, set it aside, and tomorrow come back to it with a wet sponge and clean it up. Sorry, I just like did this without even explaining what I was doing. So next thing is we're going to be doing, I'll show you how to do a coil pot. So I have these, you're going to start by, you have your ball of clay and you're going to turn it into coils, little snakes. So what I'm doing first is squeezing it so that's kind of like longer. And then that's when once you have something like this, a little more manageable, that's easy to roll out, then you roll it out. And try to keep it as even as possible. It's easy, and use the whole surface of your hand when you're rolling, not just the fingertips, because then you'll get a square coil. So you want to give yourself a nice round coil. If it's starting to get a weird shape, just pinch it back into a roundish shape. So now I'm going to do this and just keep rolling. And if it gets really long, you can just split it in half. And if you get like a skinny spot, just tear it off. This clay is very wet, and I hope your guys' isn't as wet as this. But you know, you want to have something like kind of like this size for a coil. This is a good point to start.
How big is that? If people are making their coils like an inch or?
Yeah, I would say like an inch. I mean, you can go kind of big, but again, the thing is you don't want to like leave it too thick, because then it'll just be unnecessarily heavy. Okay, so once you have your coils rolled out, you want to start with a base. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, just like when I'm rolling on a slab, I'm going to roll out a base. So I'm going to do a round base, so like a round bottom. And then roll it out, get it as even as possible. And I even have, like, if you guys have cookie cutters, those are kind of fun. We have these like round ones, but you could do ones with shapes. You could trace with the coffee mug, trace with, like, grab another bowl, trace with a bowl. There really are a ton of tools and ways that you can get the job done. Okay. So really right now, all I'm looking for is the bottom of my pot, right? And now I'm going to show you, because I need some planters. So I'm gonna make a planter, but you can make like anything you want, really. You can make, I really like coils because it's infinite what you can do with them. Okay. So once I have my slab rolled out, the shape that I want, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna start taking these coils and just building up. So what I honestly have been thinking lately is when I'm coiling, I like to think of myself as a 3D printer, because it's like you really are just like building up one coil at a time. So what you're gonna do is, again, make sure you're scratching everything that you're attaching. And then I'm gonna scratch my coil too. And especially since these coils are a little bit harder, these ones right here, than the new stuff, I definitely want to be adding water. The key is that you want everything to kind of be the same consistency, like moisture wise. Otherwise it won't want to attach. So now let's see. So now what I'm doing is I'm using my middle finger and my thumb. And what I do is I'm just pinching and kind of pushing down at the same time, directly in the center of that coil. Give me just a second. Sorry, trying to get it so you can see better, but it's not great. So
We can see it looks great.
okay. Yeah, I'll get rid of this bucket then. That's not working. Okay, so pinching, just middle finger and thumb, pinching and pushing down. So what I'm gonna do, because you guys can do it any way that you want. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build first, and it, like right here, I missed a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is just tear a little strip off and fill that little space. So what you can do, if you can leave it just coils, but what I'm gonna do is show you how you can blend it afterwards. So what you do is you're gonna build up a few layers and then blend the coil. And I like to try to keep it as like doing one layer at a time. So if I have something like this, I tear that off and blend it. So it's kind of the same level because it's easy with coil pots. You can cut the top off once you're done, but it's easy for them to get really weird. So you want to make sure you're kind of keeping control of your form. So I guess before I move forward anymore, I'll show you what you're going to do is like on the inside, you need to blend those lines. So what I do is with my middle finger, is I'm just pushing down and going in, and I'm going to set it on the table so I can push into the table. Or I'm going to, go swish left or right, just kind of in a round motion, just trying to blend that seam. And so then it's kind of the same method for blending too. I'm going to do another coil and then show you how to blend it. One thing I do too with a coil pot, if I have that seam line, I don't start my coil right on top of that seam, right? Because then this might create like a thin spot in this center. So it's kind of like you're laying brick. You start the next layer kind of over a little bit. So you don't have like a straight line of nothing, of no clay. Because when it dries, the clay will shrink a little. So if there's not a lot there, then it will just literally create a crack or a hole.
Kyle, while you're adding your coils, I'm going to give people time to ask some questions, and I'm going to unmute because if people have clay on their hands, they might not want to type. Maddie just pointed that out to me. So if you would like to ask a question, you can unmute yourselves and ask a question at this point. Does anyone have any questions?
Is there a size that we should be kind of trying to keep it within so that it will fit in the kiln?
No, you guys can go as big as that clay will take you. Let me just do a quick tour and show you. Well, here, I'll just spin the camera really quick. And I'm sorry, the garage is a mess because I'm having a sewer line repair. But you can see in the corner there, that red thing, it's probably hard to see like scale wise, but it's pretty big. Like we can fit a ton of work in there. There's no size limit. You guys can make a few things if you want, like break it up into a few things. Totally up to you. You can make a sculpture.
Great question. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question?
So it can just really be anything, right? Not having to follow, just having some of the techniques, but not really doing what he's doing. It can just be anything.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you.
So now what I'm doing, if you want to, I mean, I didn't do a very great job because I started blending them. So you wouldn't really want, I mean, you could, but you don't really want your pot to look like that. So, but it would be nice if you could smooth it. So what you're going to do now at this point is just blend these coils together. So just with my fingers, I'm going to either push the coils up and down and just blend them.
Do you need extra water for that, or does that just work?
That just works. Again, I would avoid putting too much water on at this point because it's easy to make a mess. And now I'm just going through and see how these coils are like that, and I'm blending down. And it's kind of a tedious process. I'm not gonna do all the smoothing on mine. But it's worthwhile, you know, this is definitely like, that's what I like about coil pots. I like building like giant coil pots, or I'm gonna build big old planters after this, using this same method. So it's really, really fun. You just can kind of, so if you want to do something different using coiling, just think about the shape that you're making. Okay, so once you have your coils blended and smooth, one thing that I like to do is go through, and you can do middle fingers, pointer fingers, and thumbs, but I just like to go through and pinch and make sure that my walls are nice and even. Because at this point, especially with all the blending up and down, it's kind of inconsistent and nasty looking. So you want to just spend some time pinching it and making it look even, because that's when it's going to really, really turn out.
So Kyle, in the chat, there's a couple of questions, and I think we have the right answer that Maddie helped us out with, but so everyone else hears it. Someone wants to make a bowl shape using another bowl, and they wondered if it would stick. So the suggestion is to put plastic wrap over your own bowl, and you put the clay over the plastic wrap. Is that a good solution?
Yeah, I think that would work. We could try, you could try it. You could try, you know, with the bowl shape, you could drape it on the inside. I don't know what it looks like, but you could drape it on the inside and get this kind of a curve and just push it in, smooth it in slowly, or drape it over a bowl. But then you might, if you have a foot ring, you'll get that little indent on the inside, which might not be the end of the world, but yeah, like there are special molds like these that are just round forms that are designed to make those kind of things.
And I would imagine some plastic wrap or a plastic bag might help if it's your kitchen bowl.
Yeah, of course. So, and then one thing I like too about pinch pots is at this point, it might like kind of look uneven. And I haven't even built very tall yet. So, but if you guys have a wooden spatula, that is my all-time favorite clay tool, is the wooden spatula. Because now what I can do is you just look at the profile, so the edge of the pot. And you look at that profile of it, and if I see any like uneven lines or anything, you just tap it in. And this, you also have to like be patient with pinch pots. If they feel like it's slumping over or not keeping its shape, set it aside. If you guys have a blow dryer, like if you like are in a pinch and in a rush and want to get this done, or want to try your workout quicker to move on to the next step, you could use a hair dryer, a blow dryer, just to dry it out. Because like what I like about pinch pots is I can build as tall as I want, but if I keep going, it's just wet clay and it's really flimsy and it'll start getting really weird. But if I let this firm up, so if I set this aside for another 20 minutes, it'll be nice and firm, and then I can keep building and it just won't be like super wobbly and weird. So it really is about patience. So if you need to, paddle it out, tap it. That also kind of helps smooth it too. It like compresses the clay together. If you have like I have these kind of nasty sharp edges. So I'm gonna flip it, paddle them in. You can also use, if you're doing like a slab and you have sharp edges, or like this, like anything, you can use just a piece of paper and then fold it over any of those sharp edges, and it'll kind of fold those down. And at any stage, like with clay, like in 20 minutes, I might be able to do things to it that I wouldn't have been able to do now So like I was saying, like, don't worry too much about it looking super rough now, because once it's firmed up, you can really clean it up with the wet sponge.
Kyle, we had another question about that drying time. If you can use a hair dryer, could you use the warm setting on your oven?
I wouldn't, you can do that. I think the only thing I'm recommending for like using the hair dryer is just like, say, because like this cup, for example, see how it's still moving around on me? Before I attach my handle or anything like that, I want to make sure this thing is nice and firm. So I would suggest just letting it air dry. That's the best bet. I wouldn't put it in the oven because it can get away from you too quick and then be dry, and then you won't be able to do much to it once it's dry. So I would, let it, you can use a hair dryer in like 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and then touch it, see how it feels. Because you don't want it to be dry. You can still like bring it back to life by, if you have a spray bottle with water or a paintbrush, or just brush it on with some water with your hand. You can bring it back to life, but you really want to avoid letting your clay dry out too much before you're done with it. Because then you can't attach anything to it. It'll be harder. I can carve into it, but it'd be harder for me to do certain things to it. Okay, so I am going to move on to my last one and then we'll jump back and see how much time we have. But for my last method, I'm gonna do a pinch pot. And so what I think about with the pinch pot is before I start like putting my thumb through it and opening it up, I want to like get kind of sort of the shape that I'm looking for, like the end product. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make this cup. I'll bring one down and show you, so you kind of know what to expect. But I'm gonna make one of these cups. So I really like making these cups with kind of like, well, they're almost like goblets. But so and they have this like little skirt. So I'll show you how I make that and something like that. But what I do, so when I'm first making these, they honestly look like ice cream cones to me. So what I'm doing is I like to give it a nice, narrow, small foot. The foot is here. So if you think of a pot, you can think of it as a person. Like it's got its lips, its shoulders, its belly, its skirt, its foot. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it kind of a little narrow foot. And even on the bottom here, I like to hollow out the bottom because it's a nice little surprise at the bottom. So what I do is just with my finger, I'm just going to start here at the bottom and not go too deep, but just a little bit like that. And now what I'm going to do is give it a skirt. So what I'm doing is just going to pinch like this. And it's okay if I have like unevenness, because I'm going to just keep pinching and keep trying to like compress the clay to get that shape that I'm looking for. And I guess with pinch pots or anything really, you really want to make sure like with this skirt, I'm going to pinch it out and make it really thin, but I don't want to get too thin too fast, because then you'll get really uneven spots. So now what I'm going to do, and check for evenness too, take your time. Even like say I want to round it out a little more, use the handy dandy spatula. But, and same thing, like afterwards, when I'm done with anything, if you want to like refine the shape, just check that profile, spin it, and tap it till you get the desired line. So now I'm gonna just dive in with my finger and hollow it out. So I have this hole on this side. So you just want to, I'm just going to meet in the middle and not go through, try not to make a hole. And now I can start pinching. So I'm going to start opening this thing up. So what you're going to do is I'm going to do again, thumb and middle finger, and you're going to start pinching from the bottom and rotating. And the key when you're doing this is not to jump around all over the pot, trying to pinch it and get it the right shape. You want to rotate it and pinch. And then once you get back to that point, like once I've gone all the way around, I go up a layer and then I pinch. So I'm going to do something just to kind of show you guys how to put some texture on things. So what I like to do with these is sometimes make them kind of crunchy and nasty looking. So what I do is just add a bunch of texture to it. So I've never used this tool before, but I'm gonna try it. I'm just gonna start rolling it like so. Go all the way around. And there's like, I have this thing, it's for fabric. Just gives you like nice dotted lines. Again, there's like so many things you can do here. So just get creative, have fun with it. If it doesn't work, squish it up, add some more water, and make it into something else. So sorry, I'm gonna go all the way around since I committed. And then I'm gonna continue pinching, and I'll lose some of that texture, but I actually really kind of like how it looks. So now I'm gonna kind of work on this a little. So I'm just pinching this. And another thing too, with that glaze sheet that you guys have, if you guys feel like maybe adding a couple different colors, or like having like the top one and the bottom something else or something like that, maybe just write like a note, or draw a little simple sketch of your pot and tell us where you want it glazed. Like I'm imagining this guy. What if I did like different colors of glaze in each one? It might be kind of fun. So if you have anything like that, feel free to do that. So now I'm just going to go and pinch this. And the thing that I like about these forms, like somebody asked a question about how thin can you go? You can go paper thin and it will still work. But you know, you just have to be a little bit more gentle or more patient with it. So what I like to do, you can't see it because this glaze has covered it up, but what I like to do is pinch it. I can show you on this slab cup here, so that might work. So I have my slab cup and it's just kind of like a simple cylinder, right? But then what I like to do, especially while it's still just a little wet, is I like to bulge it out just a little. So I'm just going with my middle finger, going at the bottom and raising up and rotating. And if you feel like it's gonna maybe like careful not to put a hole through it or punch through it, it's easy to do that. So, and I'll just do this, like I'll thin it out, I'll round it out a little, and then I'll set it aside for 20, 30 minutes. That's like the hot word tonight is 20, 30 minutes. But if you just set it aside for a little bit and let it firm up and then come back to it, then it'll be so much easier, and I can go through and push it out a little bit more. You really do kind of like, the more and more you play with it, the more you'll find how far you can push it, and how far you can push it when you wait too. So even like right now, I'm going to pinch out my slab walls a little bit because they were a little uneven. But then as I do this, I'm also creating volume for my cup. And you could do like just roll out a slab. You don't have to do, because I'm looking now, like some of the texture in this pot did get pinched out, and I personally really like that aesthetic. But at this point, I could just take stamps and go through and stamp into the pot. And same thing with the coil pot. Say I build this up 2 feet, 3 feet tall, right? And then I can go over it, go stamp, 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 stamp. Sorry. But, so just think of it as a method of building, really. Because from there, it can be anything.
Let's take a minute and see if anyone has any questions they want to ask. You can unmute yourself if you have a question for Kyle. He has all 3 samples there, and I'm sure he could answer any questions you might have.
So you can also I'm going to just rush it and show you, but if you want to do a handle, one quick, easy way to do it is just roll out, kind of a thicker slab and make a kind of carrot shape. And then roll out that carrot. And if I need to, I'm putting it on the table and shaping it with my hands. Flip it, tap it, shape it, and just set this aside. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many things you can do, guys. So after this, maybe look around the house and see what there is and what else you can add to it. If you have extra clay, you can make something a little small to go alongside it. You can also just throw the scraps away. If there's not a lot of scraps, don't worry about keeping them or bringing them back to the studio.
We have a question, Kyle.
Yeah.
I feel the base of my coil pot is too thin for the heaviness of the coils. Is that okay? How should I fix it?
If you can, I might have to see when we open it up here in a second. But if you can, just take a little bit of clay. If you feel like there's a thin spot, like right here, see? So I'm just gonna smush it out and see how now I pretty much have this thing, I just poked right through it, right? So say I did something like that. So then you just take a little bit of extra clay and smush it on there and blend it. You can, so you can repair your bottoms if they tear. You can repair some of the, and if say I punched through this, it might be really hard for me to put a little chunk of clay there because it might be too soft. But if you wait and then wait for it to firm up, then you can fill that hole. So don't worry too much if you've done something and then you're like, oh man, I feel like this is gonna break. We'll just wait for it to firm up a little and then fill any weak points.
So Kyle, why don't you show us how to do the handle, and then when you do the handle, after that, we will let people share their work if they want, or if they want to troubleshoot something with you, they can show you on video.
Perfect. Okay, so basically I have my handle straight. And I'm just gonna refine it just a wee bit more. But now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut, you're gonna start by attaching the top of the handle first. So what I'm gonna do is I kind of cut like a U, because that's the shape of the cup to fit the contour of the cup. So something like that. And then you want to take, this is obviously, again, like I said, way too soft. You want this thing to be like hard before you attach to it. But imagine this is my finished cup. So once you're done with your cup and everything, then you add the handle. The handle is kind of like the last step for your cup. So I'm going to start by scratching and doing this top part. And then what I do is with my hand on the inside, I take this, and you'd scratch this too. I'm cheating. But you scratch here, scratch before you attach everything. And then I just squeeze in. Again, so you see here, this is why I'm saying wait for it to dry, because see how I'm just squishing my pot? So if I wait for it to dry, I can attach my handle and just go squish. But right now, this thing's just going all over the place, but that's fine. So it's not gonna be a clean looking handle, but that's okay. So once I have my top attached, I like to use a pencil. A pencil is actually kind of nice to get underneath, like right here. It's really nice to get under there. I'm not even gonna bother doing it just because this is just gonna be really messy. But when you're doing it, that's a point that it forms cracks if it's not done correctly. So you want to make sure that you just are really kind of blending that line in that seam. And a pencil or a pen really helps get in there rather than trying to get in there with your finger. Okay, once my top's attached, then I take it, and I always, when I'm doing my handles, I always make them a little bit bigger so that I can adjust them. And also with handles too, I'm sorry guys, but you are going to have to wait. So it's hard, again, you can see with the cup how it's folding around. You can see with my handle how it's folding around. It doesn't keep its shape. So you want to like make something, try to like let it dry and get the desired shape and then attach it. But so imagine this thing is my desired shape. And I always have a little bit extra so that if it doesn't fit, I can cut off any extra on the bottom. But let's say that's good. So now what I'm going to do is with my finger on the inside, I'm just going to push in and blend. And sometimes what I do too, so again, like I said, like handles are tricky because they like to crack, because this is just really mushy and weird, so it's hard to see. It's not a great example. But so like right here, you see that line? Once that dries, that's gonna open up bigger. So that could become a crack. And the same thing with, how do I do it? Like this, you can't really see it, but the bottom inside is always kind of a weak point too. So one thing I do, again, this is really like not a great pot, but what you're gonna do is if you feel like these areas are not really super stable, make or they need a little bit more support, just make the tiniest little coil and drape it all the way around it. So I go like this. And I like when I'm doing this, my pots are dry, like pretty much. It's called leather hard. They're firm enough that they're not moving around, but there's a little bit of moisture that you can still kind of attach wet clay to it. So this isn't a great example, but so if I had a pot like my handle and I noticed that it maybe needed a little bit more work, might look like it's a kind of wimpy handle, that's when I would do this. And you take your bucket of water or some water, and I would physically dip it in there, drape it, and blend it. So it's going to be hard for me to blend this thing beautifully because it's all super wet now. But you would just blend it up and blend it down. And then that little coil just fills out the inside seam here. And then you do the same thing, drape it all the way around. And then once this thing dries, use those wood sculpting tools to model it a little bit. That's what those tools are for. You can use them so you can see like how I have that little part of the handle that's a little bit out. So once that's firmed up, I can take a modeling tool and just kind of straighten it out and really look at this thing and look at the shape of it and try to refine it and get the desired shape of what you're looking for.
We have another question. How do you stop the clay from sticking to your stamps and your roller?
It depends on the stamp. You kind of just need like a wood stamp or like like these rubber stamps that I use kind of are sticky. So maybe just wait a little bit for the clay to firm up and see if it takes the texture a little better.
So a drier clay might work better.
Yeah, and also I use a wooden rolling pin as opposed to like if you have a ceramic one or a vinyl one, that might be causing it.
I had another question about the handle. You said the cup needs to be hard, dry-ish, not bone dry, but leather hard. Do you need to make the handle be that same leather hard before you attach the two pieces, or do you attach the wet handle to the dry mug?
They both have to be the same consistency.
Great.
So like if I have a wet pot, I want to put wet stuff on a wet pot. If I have a dry pot, I want to put dry stuff on a dry pot.
Great. And how do I keep my clay wet if I want to save it for making another piece, or if I want to make coils for repairs?
What I would do is ball it up. If you have scraps and stuff, ball it up. Because like and especially if you guys have stuff just like sitting around your table right now like this, ball this up because it's going to dry out really quick. And then if it's really dry, dunk it in water and then just wrap it up and it'll rehydrate itself. And then you can take it and squeeze it up. You can kind of wedge it on the table a little bit, squish it into a ball till it's kind of a more workable consistency.
Might be a good time if anyone wants to share a piece or ask questions. I think I have the right settings that you are allowed to unmute yourself now, and you can show your piece. I will take the spotlight off of Kyle. If you want to show something or ask a question, now is a great time.
Ooh.
Want to tell them about yours? No. Tell them about it.
That's awesome.
Say thank you. Say thank you. Thank you. Get up the stream where he can see you, goofball.
What do you have?
Okay.
Looks like
it's a dragon.
Oh, a dragon. That's awesome. That's perfect.
Would you like me to turn it to you?
Great.
Yeah, show me your mug. Yeah, come on. You can show them this. We're not this. It looks good.
What else? Does anyone else want to show a piece? Oh, wow. Look at those.
Wow, productive over there. Nice.
What'd you make? A cup? Yeah.
Ooh, very nice.
Nice.
Still attempting to touch the handle. So the bottom part should have the same little U shape as the top or not?
Kyle, we had a question about the bottom, attaching the bottom of a handle. Oh, Kyle went away for a second. Let's see where he went. I wonder if his video went out. I think, Jessica, to answer your question, I think it would depend if you want the handle to be attached straight or angled like you have it. If it's angled, I would just probably score the two sides so they attach flat. And if you wanted it to be similar to the top, then you would make the U. And I think Kyle lost his video altogether. We lost him.
Okay, that helps. So thank you.
Yep. And I think he'll be back in just a minute, I hope. Hopefully he didn't lose his battery. Does anyone else have any other questions for us or want to share a piece? See if I can get Kyle back. This is a technical difficulty I did not expect. So I do want to share with you the instructions for returning your pieces. Kyle will glaze and fire all of your work, and you will need to drop your pieces off at the studio. He'll have a table out, and you need to drop it off with your glaze sheet and indicate what you want on your piece. I believe he wanted the pieces by next weekend. So you have a week and you can let them air dry at your own home, get them to that point of being leather dry. You can make several pieces if you want. Just make sure your name is on the piece. We'll see. Oh, here's Kyle. He's coming back.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. So Kyle, can you give us the instructions about dropping off the clay and the tools?
Yeah, it's pretty much at that table right where you guys picked everything up. Just go ahead and bring it back to the table. And with your kit too, I would recommend waiting for your work to be dry before transporting it. And then make sure that you guys fill out that glaze sheet on the packet. And then that's it.
And what date do they need to return their work for your next for the firing?
By March 14th. So that's the end of next week. Sorry, I missed some of your guys' pots, I think, but everything looked really great.
Does anyone else want to show anything or ask a question?
I can show mine. I want to show mine.
Let's see.
I made kind of like a bowl. I put a candle in, and I try to make a flower in the front, but I think it looks more like a spider.
Oh, I love it.
That's really fun.
I love it, Carmen.
So
That's great.
I had a hard time getting started, but I think once I got going, I just kept going and it was easier.
Yeah.
That's great.
So
I think that Tina wants to show, let's see. Tina is showing us
Ooh. Earrings.
homemade earrings. Thank you, Tina. Those look great. Anyone else?
I love that bowl, Abigail.
Yeah, I really like that pattern, Abigail. And I think as Wendy, I really like how smooth you got
Yeah.
it.
Oh, Wendy, let's see yours. Let's see if I can. There we go. Oh, beautiful.
Ooh, I
Oh,
love that.
lovely.
Nice.
Great.
Cool little
see.
planter.
Wonderful. I really appreciate everyone participating.
Thank you, Kyle. Bye.
Thank you guys. It was good seeing you.
Kyle. Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
guys.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
I can't wait to see everyone's work.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was fun.
Great. Thanks for participating.
All right. Bye-bye.
Wow, some great work there.
Say what it is.
Let's see.
Ooh.
Tell them what it is.
It's a dinosaur.
Oh, I like it. Is it kind of like a cup too? I like that.
It's a pinch pot.
I like it. Good job.
Great creative work.
Yeah. And so like with this guy at the end of it, I don't think this one's a winner for me. So I'm gonna squish it up, but now I can make this into something new. So it doesn't matter if you guys made a mistake and you need to start over. Just make sure if it's feeling kind of crunchy, dunk it in water, and then you can make it into something else.